Update 10.9 is here. Fall Forever dropped on May 7th, 2024. It's the largest creative update by far and arguably the biggest Fall Guys update of all time. A new version of solos with fewer players and rounds, a shared round pool between all 3 core modes, new bean physics featuring higher jumping, less ragdolling, and better mid-air control, less frequent LTMs, a creative experience that doesn't suck 90% of the time, and so much more. This update is very exciting as it changes the entire way that the game is played on all levels. And just like 10.8, there's a lot of hype surrounding the update, and for good reason. It's a very good update, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. In this video, I'm going to go through everything that the Fall Forever update has added to the game and rate it 1 through 10. Here's an outline of everything I'm going to cover as always, so you can skip to the timestamp that interests you the most.
I would be delighted, Mother.
Starting with Explore Mode. Explore Mode is 10.9's biggest accomplishment by far. Say what you want about creative rounds themselves, whether you like them or not, but we have never had a fluent and satisfying way to play through a lot of these creative rounds quickly. You can now skip rounds that you don't enjoy or just don't feel like playing, and the moment you qualify, you get sent into a new matchmaking queue for a new creative round almost instantly. I played Explorer for a few hours yesterday, and compared to the shuffle playlist in 10.8, I've had to have saved at least 30 to 45 minutes on just load times alone and not having to wait for other players to finish the races. The only gripe I do have with the Explore mode is that it can sometimes be a little bit wonky in a party from my experience. Sometimes if the round ends before you find a new match, it will kick you back to the lobby, but it doesn't happen frequently enough to overshadow how big of a feature this is, and it's still light years faster than coming back to the lobby every single time. Another issue I had with Discovery was that we didn't get crown shards from the levels that we completed, whereas with the shuffle playlist, we would get 20 for each round. But as of an hour ago of me recording this voiceover, Mediatonic has dropped a content update to give us 5 shards for each creative round that we complete and explore. This is much less than before, but because we can skip rounds, queue for a new round instantly, and don't have to go back to the show selector every time, the 5 shards will certainly add up over time and most likely be just as plentiful as the shuffle playlist were. If 10.9 was just the Explore mode and the new creative features, it'd be an amazing update. Explore mode itself, I'm giving a 9.5 out of 10. Room for improvement, but an absolute godsend for the creative experience. Let's move on. Next up, let's talk about these new social features. The new social features include the emote wheel, which you get from hitting right on the D-pad, the social wheel, which you get from hitting left on the D-pad, and the piggyback option, which you can ask or accept by pressing up on the D-pad. So the emote wheel features 4 emotes from pre-10.9, most likely whatever you had selected, as well as 4 preset stickers that also reflect certain emotions. The phrase wheel has 8 unique preset phrases that you can use to communicate with other beings in a helpful, funny, or toxic way. And last but not least, the piggyback feature, which is the most revolutionary, allowing you to hop on another player's back and allow them to do all the heavy lifting. In piggyback mode, the bottom player controls every movement, jumping, diving, sliding, or emoting. The person on the back can dismount at any time, especially if the bottom player is a little bit unpredictable. All 3 of these changes are absolutely great for the game in my opinion. It makes the game feel more social and interactive, and allows casual players to have the chance to skip through tough sections within a round, and adds to the meme potential of the game, which to me is very important. Jokes aside, the only thing I will say is that it took me a very long time to figure out how to use the new wheels. Thankfully, piggybacking is much simpler, but I'm sure we'll all get used to this new thing with time. Overall, the new social features are a 9 out of 10. Hopefully we get some new phrases or stickers that we can use for the wheels in the future. Next up, let's talk about the creative additions that we got for 10.9. I'll briefly go through the lesser creative additions and then talk about the big one at the end. So we got 16 new stickers, some of which we knew about before the update, but it's always good to get more of a feature. And I believe you can choose more colors for the stickers as well, which unlocks another level of creativity. Timers now go up to 30 minutes, which is great for players who want to make very hard levels or for players who need more time to learn them. We also got invisible checkpoints, which are great for reducing unnecessary budget spending and removes the need to worry about checkpoints staying within the level theme. We also got the LS5 jungle background, which is always great. Even though it's not 3D, it still looks pretty good, and it's a welcome change. Object maximums have increased. Plenty of objects and obstacles that we can only place 10 or 25 of previously have had their maximum values increased to over 50, and I'll scroll through them here on the screen right now just to make it a little bit more clear. We got a brand new music track for 10.9. It's called Yata Yata by a new composer to our game, Leonardo Lima. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Here's a little snippet of it. A couple people have posted the full OST, so I'll post a link to it in the description. It's absolutely kick-ass, and for Leonardo's first Fall Guys track, he absolutely nailed it. Alright, last but not least, the big kahuna, the rotation controllers. This is the big 10.9 Creative Edition, and it is really cool to see in action. I've played and seen a few levels that use the rotation controller as the main gimmick, and I can say the creators for this game are so talented, bro. My only issue, and it's an issue that's widespread throughout the community at this point, the rotation controller is just too expensive right now, man. From what I understand, it's 40 budgets alone just to place the thing, and then 20 for each one that you want to add to the rotation or like link to it. This makes it very hard to maximize the feature, and many high-level creators within the community are somewhat disappointed that their ideas can't be fully realized yet, but I'm sure that Mediatonic hears the feedback and will make tweaks on it within the next few updates. So the creative editions as a whole, 9.5 out of 10. If this is the direction that the game is going with creative levels at the forefront, you need to keep expanding what's possible in the level editor, and aside from the expensive rotation controller, this update does not disappoint on that front. All right, next up, let's talk about the physics changes that we got. The main physics changes are increased jump height, increased acceleration to top speed, increased midair control, reduced ragdoll chance, faster recovery from ragdolls, and other inherent physics changes such as momentum, bar skips, hammer skips, and yeetus usage. So let's start in order and work our way down the list. The increased jump height feels absolutely unreal, but that's probably because I'm so used to the pre-10.9 physics. Is this better? Not necessarily, but as someone who's been playing since Legacy, it is cool to see new shortcuts open up on old levels, and it 100% makes the game easier for casual or younger players. So it is a good change in my opinion. The increased acceleration is probably the hardest one of the 5 to notice, but I do feel faster overall, and I'm sure the acceleration has a lot to do with that. The increased midair control also feels crazy. I feel like I can make any adjustment to my jump or dive and just land perfectly. The only thing I'm not particularly a fan of is how difficult the midair control makes it to eliminate someone with an explosive. There are tons of PvP survival rounds in Explorer and Knockout right now, and the main means of elimination is through blast balls or party crashers. My problem is when I hit someone with a blast ball that would normally send them flying off the map, only to have them steer themselves 30 meters back onto the platform I just launched them off of. It can make these kinds of rounds very tedious to play and leave a lot of them up to RNG cannons or unlucky hex style drops rather than the skill of using the explosives to eliminate the competition. Basically, all I'm saying is the midair control while jumping is absolutely great, and the midair control while ragdolling is way too overpowered, and I hope they tweak it. Speaking of overpowered, the reduced ragdoll chance feels like a cheat code based on what I'm used to. Never have I landed from such large heights or momentums and been completely fine. Now, on the off chance I do ragdoll, I pop back up like an athlete who got caught trying to fake an injury. It does make the game a lot less frustrating, but it also reduces the caution that you normally play with, as it feels like anything goes. I like this at first, but honestly, I'm torn on these two. Lastly, I want to talk about the physics changes surrounding momentum boosts like yeet skips, bar skips, and expanding balls. In the blog post, it says that yeetuses don't launch you as far. Well, I have a different theory based on what I've noticed so far. I'm not exactly sure how they did it, but it seems like yeets require a much more perfect timing and accuracy of hit to use them properly. Hitting them at the wrong spot seems to send you flying in a much worse angle than before, but if you get a perfect hit, it will send you flying. And paired with a new midair control, you can really cover a ton of ground with them. As far as bar skips and the expanding balls, they give you way more momentum than before, but just be careful because it's super slippery and hard to counter steer yourself if you're not perfect. All in all, the new physics feel abnormal for someone who's played the game since Legacy, but props to Mediatonic for having the expanding balls, if you will, to change their physics this late into the game's lifespan. We'll all get used to these new physics eventually, and overall, I do think they're a great change. They make the game easier for casual players, making them want to play longer, and it opens up so much shortcut potential and speed boosts for pro players and speedrunners. With some minor tweaks to a few things I just mentioned, I think the physics will be perfect moving forward. 8.5 out of 10. All right, let's talk about these quality of life changes that the update has brought. They kind of flew under the radar somewhat, but these are great changes for the game, and quality of life is my favorite kind of update, so I really want to mention them. First up, we got a new keybind for likes. Instead of using A or X on your controller, they now use D-pad up or D-pad down, which is a very small change, but an important one. You don't know how many levels I've liked on accident by trying to spam past my celebration screen. You can also now reset to checkpoint using this button here on the start menu. This prevents against soft locks and creative race levels if they happen. Next up, we finally got thumbnails for creative rounds. Until this update, we had that stock creative image on the loading screen for rounds that were not made in Unity. And this was acceptable at first as creative was in its early stages, but as time went on and more creative levels were part of the main shows and playlists, it became very frustrating that we didn't know we were getting ourselves into before the round started. I know you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but I at least want there to be a cover. So this is a great change. Hopefully we get an option to create intro cameras for rounds as well to better illustrate what the creative rounds have to offer. And while we're on this loading screen, I can also mention that we have these new tooltips that cycle at the bottom of the screen, which are great for new players, for them to understand certain intricacies of the game. It teaches you how to dive slide, grab ledges and items, use power-ups, and many other things. And if you play the game for as long as I have, you'll probably give two shits about this feature, but I'm sure those lower tier matchmaking lobbies are loving this information. And then speaking of loading screens, I also want to quickly mention this loading screen right here, which I don't really know what to call it, but I think it's the one that takes you between levels on Explorer and to and from the lobby screen. Anyway, it's brand new and it has really cool simplification of what it means to play the game. You play games, earn rewards, and you use those rewards to stylize your bean. You might think this is pointless, but if enough players see this often, we'll have a lot less beans wearing the same 4 free patterns and colors from the current fame pack. Long story short, any quality of life change that helps new players understand small details of what they should be doing, earning, and striving to achieve is a great way to drive players to want to play the game more. And with a large number of potentially new players coming very soon, I think these changes are great for the game, and I'll always give Mediatonic their flowers when they add them. These quality of life changes are a 10 out of 10. Good shit, Mediatonic. Let's move on. All right, it's time for the most controversial topic of the entire video, the main show changes. And before I start, I want to mention that the backlash for these changes was so brutal that Mediatonic had to release hotfixes just 6 days into the update's release, which for transparency have gone live about a day and a half ago of me recording this voiceover. These changes include knockout moving from 3 to 4 rounds, changes to final levels in the round pool, and various bug fixes and quality of life changes. It's great to see Mediatonic willing to change things in the game that aren't popular or just don't work entirely, but with that being said, there are still a lot more things to talk about, so let's dive in. So, as we know, we've gone from a 5 to 6 round 40 player solos experience with about 65 rounds in total, 5 being creative race rounds, to a now 4 round 32 player experience with 40 rounds, with only 17 of those rounds being made in Unity. We also know that 3 core modes now share the same round pool and will hopefully refresh at least monthly. We've lost our weekly LTM privileges and have no idea when we'll get another one to play. Casual Rumble or Chill Solos is no longer available, despite it being a large number of players' favorite way to play the game, as well as this update being super social and perfect for it. So the question is, are these changes a good thing at this point in the game's lifetime? And my honest answer is no. No, it is not. But before I get called out for being a baby, I just want Mediatonic to hear me out on this one. You have to understand your player base, and for every person that likes creative mode and what it's bringing to the game, there are 2 players that can't stand it. And now I understand that this is the future of the game. And listen, I'm on board with you, but these Redditors over here are gonna need a lot more convincing. Now you had a great thing going. We had discovery and shuffle playlists for those who wanted to try out all the new creative rounds, and we had our core shows for players who wanted that standard Fall Guys experience. Eventually, you added a dash of creative rounds that fit well within the core shows just to show people what's possible and where the game is headed, which to me was fine. Now, those shuffle playlists, but you've outdone yourself with the Explore mode, and now playing through creative rounds is actually pretty fun, especially with friends. But with the changes to the knockout round pool and how you're forcing creative rounds down people's throats, especially these survival finals, is not the way to go about getting them on this side of the creative acceptance fence. Just think of it this way. Asking players who only like Unity rounds to accept the creative rounds of main shows is like trying to get them into an ice bath. It's gonna suck and they're not gonna like it, but eventually their bodies will adapt, right?
What?
At first, there were only 2 creative rounds in solos only, and then later you moved it up to 5 creative rounds in all 3 core shows. Essentially, at first, you were just asking these players to just dip their toe into the ice bath that is creative round. But with 10.9, it's like you're throwing them into the ice bath head first without warning, and now they started tweaking. You cannot do that to people. I don't know what you expected. You know the narrative around creative levels at this point, and I seriously don't know how well you thought this would go over. So here are my honest takeaways for Knockout. 40 rounds is way too few. I've played more jump clubs in the past 3 days than any round I've ever played in this game ever. Hopefully with 4 rounds, the show variety is much better. Number 2, the ratio of Unity to creative rounds is way too slim on the Unity side. If 40 is the number that you're gonna stay with, I think that 28 of those should be Unity. That's 70%. Number 3, personally, I'm not a fan of the shared round pool between all 3 core modes, but if this is something that you need to do for the size of the game moving forward, then I'll suck it up as long as variety doesn't suffer. And lastly, to be completely honest, there has not been a single creative round that I've ever seen that is worthy of being a final in the main shows, but I'm sure that will will change in the future. But for now, why not keep easing players into creative rounds instead of smacking them in the face with it? As far as the rest of the show selector changes, I really hope you rethink that weekly LTMs being removed is one of the X factor things that keeps the game feeling fresh for me and so many other players, so the news of them being removed was pretty tough to hear. Also, I'm not sure why the casual show was removed, but it was a big hit when you released it almost universally from all platforms that you receive feedback on. Maybe this new update removed too many of the rounds in Casual Rumble's round pool, but hopefully you can reboot this show in the future, even if you need to supplement majority of the round pool with creative alternatives. These were some of the most controversial changes in the history of the game. Is Fall Guys doomed because of what's been done in 10.9? No. And I understand that a lot of these changes are more so for what's being worked on rather than what's been explicitly asked for, but some of these changes are just far too drastic and quite frankly water down the great things that have been added to this update. Now, the hotfixes that were launched recently are a great start, but I think Knockout and the show selector in general still need some work moving forward. Pains me to say this, but right now, 4 out of 10. This is definitely the least amount of fun I've had playing the core modes in a very, very long time. The Fall Forever update was absolutely massive and brought so many changes to the game. Whether you think they're good or bad or you're just indifferent, it's clear that we'll be entering a new era of Fall Guys this summer, and this update is only the beginning. Overall, this update is fantastic, and 8.5 out of 10 across the board. They have a few things to clean up and some issues to work out, but I don't mind the direction that the game is headed. I just think that the execution can and will get better. The last thing I'll leave you with is this. It's okay to dislike something, and it's fine to be passionate about it. But you need to remember that the game is made by humans who are and will always be imperfect. When you leave feedback, lead with respect and empathy for what the staff team might be going through. Trust that nothing that Mediatonic does is with malicious intent to your specific experience of the game. Outside of that, for better or worse, this is our game, and if you really love it as much as I do, you'll be willing to stick around and see it through. I'll see you in about 10 to 12 days for State of the Game 5. Until then, like and subscribe, and expect a few shorts from me in the meantime. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Peace.